And welcome to another episode of Chords and Conversations with Chris Hludzik
and Bryan Brophy.
And on today's show, we are going to be talking about social media and its impact on music, and in particular, the websites of Facebook and the ever infamous MySpace. We hinted in the last episode that we would be talking about this again in depth, and so here we are. For anyone who doesn't know that might be listening, maybe there's some younger people listening that have absolutely no idea, MySpace was a social networking site. My story about MySpace is kind of funny because I wasn't excited about MySpace at all, and I had to be dragged kicking and screaming into it. I just didn't see the point. It was like, yeah, okay, you can get all these people to be your quote-unquote friends on MySpace, but there were people you were never going to meet in real life, probably. And I was kind of like, well, I've got my core group of friends that I know in real life. They're really the only ones that matter to me, so why would I want to have fake friends on the internet? I guess that was my take on it. And I just was like, I don't know. So I didn't want one. And a friend of mine, Joe Wiggy, from Sound Investments Recording Studios, when I started interning there, he's like, you gotta have a MySpace, man. I was like, I don't want a MySpace. He made one for me.
That's how you got on? He made you one?
He just straight up made one for me, and he showed it to me the next time I was in the studio. And he's like, you got a MySpace page, now do something with it.
You never told me that. That's funny.
And I was like, what do I do with it? I don't know what to do with it. It's whatever. It's you post pictures on there and you talk to people. I was like, now you got to understand something about me. Even when it comes to an online interaction, I don't have quite the smoothness that some of the kids might have, as far as lingo and how to talk to people, where to talk to people, stuff like that. I'm more of an old school. I'll talk to you in person. I'll talk to you, you'll be on a need to know basis with me, basically. And so when I got on MySpace at first, I was I don't know, whatever. And I had it for a while. And I didn't really do anything with it. This is the end of 2004, by the way. And I did meet some cool people on it. And then I started kind of using MySpace as an outlet for basically my feelings, I guess you could say. And I kind of used it for what is now known today as a blog. And basically it was just an online journal, and you could post your thoughts. And me being kind of a deep person as I was back then, I thought, oh man, this is great. I could post my thoughts. But then it came to be well, okay, I'm posting my thoughts. Does anybody really care? And, you can get feedback from certain people. But what I was noticing is the feedback I was getting were from people that I already knew in real life anyway. So it was okay, great. But I already kind of knew that you thought that or whatever, but thanks. So I was indifferent to MySpace in the beginning, and MySpace really didn't start to click for me until I started actually recording my own songs and doing my demos. And I made a music MySpace because I knew there were music MySpaces, and I was excited to find out that I could make one. And so I made one, and I put my songs up there, my lyrics, everything. When I started playing shows, MySpace was really an invaluable tool because you could list your shows on there and where they were and everything and what they were about, how much they cost and everything. Similar to what you could do on Facebook nowadays. But I just remember thinking, okay, this is what MySpace is for. This is what I can get out of MySpace to promote my music. And that's kind of when MySpace clicked for me. So that was around 2006. So I was already on it for almost 2 years. Before MySpace really I was oh, okay, I could use it to promote myself, because again, I didn't really have much interest in meeting other people. And previously, the only thing that I'd really accomplished with MySpace, as we talked about in our last episode, was reuniting with you after not having seen you since high school. Mm-hmm. So other than that, and again, you were a person that I knew. It's not like I was looking for some stranger.
Right,
I was looking for someone that I knew. So, MySpace didn't really have much of a purpose for me outside of that. But then, like I said, once I did the music MySpace page, then it was oh, okay, cool. And I could try to connect with people, and this is what it's about. So that's kind of when it clicked for me.
Same with me. Like, I heard about MySpace, all these people are on MySpace, and I'm like doing music and stuff, and I know that some of the people that I knew who were musicians were on there, so I don't really know if MySpace started out as a thing solely for like musicians and fans, but it definitely was a thing that musicians used to their benefit. So I went on MySpace and I wanted to see who was on it. Like anybody that I knew, anybody that I could connect with that I lost touch with. So, I reached out and I looked up those people first. And I remember you were one of the people that I looked for because I was like, I wonder what Chris Hludzik doing. And you weren't on there yet. Wiggy didn't make your page yet.
No, that hadn't been established yet.
So I thought it was cool that you could, put songs on your profile. So, I would find the music I was listening to at the time and I'd put it up there. So when they click on your page when they're stalking you, yeah. they could see what your favorite song is, and like we, as kids, we just thought, I thought that was like so cool.
Well, I think the one thing about MySpace was, it wasn't like, because previous to MySpace, like what were there? You had like bulletin boards and message boards and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And this was a much more personalized thing because you had your profile song. You had those like websites like Pimp My Profile and stuff like that. You got all the cool backgrounds and stuff.
Yep.
And I think it was a way for people that were online to kind of
express themselves,
have a bit of a personality other than just like being on a message board where it's just, text or whatever, and there's really, you can't really do anything.
Yeah.
You could tell people like a lot about you based on like what song you had in your profile, who was your top 8, you remember that?
Oh, the top 8, yeah.
And you always vied for one of those top spots.
I know, and then, somebody like me, I was always kind of petty. I'd get mad at somebody and I'd move my number 1 to number 2 and I'd be like, that'll get them. It's just like,
wow.
what was wrong with us or what was wrong with me? The cool thing was I figured out you can have a MySpace for like your music. So I made one for a full moon sky. I was talking a little bit about that on the previous episode, but I really didn't upload many things. I just uploaded a few little demos that I recorded, and I mainly recorded the demos so that the other guys in the band could learn the songs. So like I put some guitar down, I put some drums down, I put some, and I uploaded them just, for ha-has, and I get this weird message from this girl. Like, I don't remember if it was like from across the country or if it was from another country. I remember she like reached out to me and was like, I love your song, Living for Yesterday. I just wanted you to know that it helps me, dealing with whatever her emotional issues were that she was dealing with. So being me, I was like, okay, that's cool. So I went on her profile and she had that as her profile song. Some song that I recorded in my parents' basement was on some girl's MySpace page. And I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, like, this is going to be the thing that's going to get us all famous. Like, I was really like, I could not believe that was like amazing to me,
No, absolutely. Since we're talking about having admirers on MySpace, there was this girl. I'm not going to mention her name, and I don't even know if it was her real name anyway. So I'm a big fan of a musician by the name of Ian Hunter. And he, for those who don't know, was the singer and one of the principal songwriters in the 70s rock group Mott the Hoople. And he's had his own successful solo career for like 46 years now. So, and he's still out there. He's actually planning on working on an album right now.
That's awesome.
And he's like half deaf. He has tinnitus. I mean, I respect the hell out of him that he wants to still do it. But anyway, I always loved Ian Hunter. Big inspiration to me. I was posting stuff on MySpace about Ian Hunter and how he was an inspiration and all this stuff. And I joined this Ian Hunter fan page, and it was made by this girl. And she just started talking to me, and she like friend requested me. And I was like, cool, whatever. And I think she was from Florida. So we would just kind of talk about Ian Hunter and Martha Hoople. It was innocent. It was whatever. I didn't know her. And I think she was a little older than me. I want to say maybe she was a couple years older than me. I don't know. She might have been my age. I have no idea. I think she was a little older than me, though. But she was a really cool girl.
You sure it wasn't like a 60-year-old man?
I mean, dude, you never know with the internet, but I mean, I would like to think that it was a girl in her late 20s, and I was in my early 20s. So she found out that I was a musician, and she's like, "Oh, cool, that's great, and I love your songs and all this stuff." And I was like, "Cool, thank you. I'm really glad." And I remember at one time she wanted to send me a signed picture of Ian Hunter and his guitarist Mick Ronson, and she like a signed 8x10 by them. She's like, if you I have a couple of these laying around or something. Like, I don't know who just has a couple of autographs laying around somewhere, unless they're like, they were mimeographed. They weren't like actually written out, but still it would have been cool to have. And I said, well, yeah, sure. I was like, do you want anything from this thing? No, I'll just send it to you, whatever. So I gave her my info. I never got anything. Which, whatever, I didn't care, because I thought it was kind of unusual anyway. It was like, okay. Then my first album comes out in 2008, and it's called Yours in Rock. And she downloaded a song off of it. And she used, kind of like your story, she used one of the songs I had on my MySpace page as her profile song.
Yeah.
I think it was Live that she used, the first song off of the album. And it's probably the best song I ever wrote.
I love that song.
Go figure. The first song, my first album, is the best thing I ever wrote. I should have just gave up after that. Well, all right.
Yeah.
Good night, everybody. But anyway, so she had that on her profile, and then she told me, she's like, yeah, I was able to make your song my ringtone. I was like, well, how'd you do that? And I guess back then, like iTunes, because my album was on iTunes, it had this option where, like, I guess you could download the sample of the song. Do you remember how iTunes, like, it would give you like a 30-second sample? I guess there was a way you could download just the sample of the song and use it as your ringtone, and she did. And I think she bought a copy of the album, or at least of that song or something, on iTunes. And I was like, oh, that's really cool, whatever. So then things started getting weird. She started sending me all these like really like cryptic messages, like, I really wish I could meet you. Like, I feel like we have this connection and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, sorry, you're like in Florida, I'm in Pennsylvania. I don't know if that's ever going to happen.
Right.
And she, I guess at the time, was toying with the idea of maybe being a songwriter, becoming a musician. She started posting lyrics. And she posted this one particular lyric, and it was called like "The Boy I Know" or something like that. I don't remember the exact, but it's something with "boy" in the title. She posted it in her MySpace blog. And I'm reading the lyric, and I'm like, oh no, this is about me. I'm like, this is weird. And then, like, she sent me another message after that, and she's like, I just, I don't know, I'm just having a hard time, and I have all these feelings and whatever, and I didn't know what to say. I wasn't equipped for this. And so I just didn't talk to her anymore. And then, like, just radio silence on MySpace just went dark, And I never saw her again on MySpace. She never messaged me anymore. I just thought that was a weird experience. It was just one of those things. It was like you randomly start having a conversation on the internet about a shared interest.
Yeah.
We both liked Ian Hunter, and we both liked Martha Hoople, and we would just talk about it. And I remember she ran that Ian Hunter fan page, and she would ask me, well, what song should I put up on the page? And I would tell her, well, how about the live version of Irene Wild? And she's like, well, I only have the record. I don't have the CD. I was like, well, I have the CD. I said, I'll make an MP3 and I'll email it to you. And I emailed it to her, and she put it up on the page. And then I have this promotional disc of a song from his album Rant. And there was an acoustic version of All the Young Dudes, which was a big Martha Hoople hit. And I sent her that. I was like, well, why don't you put this up? This is cool, and it's kind of rare. And she put that up. And like, so you know, she would ask me for advice about the page. Like, oh, what should I post about the page today? What should I, you know, whatever. And I'm just thinking like, I'm just having a conversation with a fan. And I'm interacting. This is what MySpace is for. It's for interacting.
But yeah, little did you know, she was like developing a weird obsession with you.
Yeah, I know. And it was just like,
wow.
It was odd. But all I know is it kind of skeeved me out to see like lyrics written about me and then these cryptic messages that she would send me. It was very, very odd. But that's my MySpace obsessive.
That's really funny.
That's my MySpace obsessive fan story.
A little funny tidbit about one of my songs. So I actually found one of the people that I wrote one of my songs about on MySpace, and I friended her, and we were kind of, you know, talking back and forth, just small talk and like direct messages, you know, oh, hey, how's it going and everything. And then like she just stopped responding to me. So I don't know if when me and you uploaded one of the songs that I wrote about her, like she realized it was about her. But I, you know, and I wonder till this day if that skeezed her out or not, because I wasn't trying to be creepy, you know what I mean? Like it, you know, it was a nice song.
Was this October?
It was October.
Okay.
Yes. And one of the things was she never unfriended me on MySpace, but she stopped talking to me. And I wonder still to this day if that freaked her out. And one of the reasons why I think she realized that the song was about her was because, well, first of all, I mentioned a specific date in the song and all that stuff. But at the same time, you know how like people would post like a quiz about me and it would be like, did you ever do this? Yes or no? You know what I mean? And they post those. Well, I was going through one of the things that she posted, and I remember it was long. It was like 50 questions. And one of them was, did you ever have a song written about you? And her response to it was, yeah, ha 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 ha. And I was like, oh crap. But the ha 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 ha, I was like, oh my God, like, did this creep her out? You know, like that was not my intention. I really never wanted her to figure out that, don't you remember I told you I wanted to change that line about the 3rd of October?
Yeah, but then I told you I kind of made the song.
Right. Well, that was her birthday. And I was like, I don't know, this might freak her out. So I'm like almost wondering if that's what did it.
But I mean, it's not like you named her by name, and it's not like,
no, exactly.
You know, if people that hear it,
you don't even know who it is.
They don't know you. No, I don't.
Yeah.
And I don't need to, and I don't care to.
And nobody else will know who it is either.
Yeah.
Maybe when I publish my memoirs, when I'm like in my 80s, I'll reveal the secret.
Well, I think this podcast is kind of act as our memoirs. Kind of.
True that.
You know? MySpace, it was, you know, it was a fun ride while it lasted, but then of course by like 2008, Facebook was really starting to take over. Yeah. And then everybody was on Facebook. And that was another thing I kind of had to be dragged kicking and screaming to. Nobody made a Facebook for me, though, this time.
Same.
I actually made my own Facebook because I figured, you know what? Whatever. I was on MySpace. MySpace is starting to kind of die. I might as well jump here because this is where everybody is. Mm-hmm. And Facebook is still going to this day. But, of course, in the interim, we also had Twitter, then Instagram. YouTube became a big thing. It really changed the perception of what you could do as a creative person, because there used to be a time where, like, if you really wanted to do something, you kind of had to like prove yourself. You kind of had to prove you were a good musician, or prove you were a good author, or prove you were a good artist, prove you were a good sculptor or painter, whatever, prove you were a good actor. Now, anybody with a computer and a camera can just, here we are, you know what I mean?
And I think we all thought we were going to get famous, you know?
You know what,
because a lot of people did get famous. Didn't MySpace even have their own record label?
For a very, very short time.
And a lot of those people got started when they got discovered on MySpace. It's crazy.
Well, it's kind of like, you know, how like a couple years ago it was all about like the SoundCloud rappers. You know?
Yep.
And it comes and goes. Again, I think like the main thing with MySpace that made MySpace really cool, and which is why I still think it was better than Facebook.
Absolutely.
Because it allowed you to show your personality. If that was something that was important to you, you could do that on MySpace. You can't do that on Facebook. Facebook is just, it's a white page with blue borders, and it's just lists of crap.
It's very blah.
Yeah, even MySpace without, getting those pimp your profile pages and stuff like that was still...
They still had defaults that were way better than what Facebook has.
Just the way it was arranged, the way it was set up,
Yeah.
It was just so much better.
It's almost like social media is devolving instead of evolving.
It is. And I get it. Like, there's something to be said for simplicity, but also, again, if you dumb it down too much, it loses its personality. And I think that's what you see with Twitter and Facebook. Not so much Instagram, because Instagram you can at least post pictures and you can post videos and stuff to that too. And you could do that to Facebook as well, but it's just not as, I don't know. MySpace just seemed better equipped for that stuff. And Facebook is just like, whatever. Mm-hmm. It's secondary. Facebook is just mostly ads now. Yeah,
and now, even if you want to, what really sucks about Facebook is, back with MySpace, your stuff, the algorithm was people were going to see your stuff, but with Facebook... you can put your band page up and no one's going to see it unless you pay them.
Well, the thing with MySpace is I don't really know if there was an algorithm for MySpace or not. But the one thing I know is that if you posted stuff, your stuff wasn't going to get bumped out by ads or paid sponsorships or people paying for their page. But the thing was, if you were posting your stuff and somebody else that's a friend of yours has a lot of friends, they're not going to see your stuff because it's still going to get buried underneath everybody else's stuff. Mm-hmm. So you still had that problem, but it wasn't to the level of where you could post something 10 times a day and people still won't see it.
Right.
Whereas with MySpace, you could post it 10 times a day and maybe at least some people will see it once or twice at least. And the thing is too, is back then you never wanted to post too much because it ticked people off if you posted too much.
Yeah, I got a couple messages from friends who were like, I think it's awesome that you're doing your music and everything, but can you stop posting the same thing every day? And I was like, okay,
well, then get off my page then, because that's what it's about.
This is why I'm on here. I'm not on here to be your friend,
Yeah. It was still a problem with MySpace, but it wasn't as much of a problem.
Yeah.
MySpace was a lot of fun. And I did meet people there that I didn't know, that I actually did get to know in real life and stuff. That were pretty cool people and got to be a part of some cool things. It was just a really cool time. And I think the thing is, too, is MySpace hit at the perfect age for us because we were in our early 20s.
Yep.
We were young. We were at that age where we were becoming adults and starting to have some responsibility, but we were still having some fun and still doing stuff and still trying different things. And it was the right time for it.
Yeah, just the right, yeah, it was perfect. At the same time, it was everybody moved to Facebook, and I was kicking and screaming too, when everybody was moving on to Facebook, and I was like, no, I'm holding on to MySpace for dear life. And then every single day it was less and less people were on there, you know what I mean? People that I used to talk to and everything, they were not there anymore. And I do remember thinking this isn't quite as cool as MySpace. Why did everybody move over here? I know. But here was the good thing about Facebook. Facebook, when it first started, was kind of a community for people who were college student ages and stuff. I remember when I got on Facebook, I think it asked specifically for my college email. Then it, got opened up to
everybody.
And while that was a good thing, you know what I mean? Now you have a lot of problems with the kids and their drama and stuff like that. But that was on MySpace too, because anybody could be on MySpace. So,
and plus, all the kids have to do is just lie about their age and put in their birthday as being 5 years older than they were or something.
Right?
Because I think MySpace wasn't the rule you had to be 13 or something to be on MySpace, and there was 9-year-old kids on there and stuff.
Yeah,
it's
just really.
Yeah. So we talked about how we got onto social media, and let's talk now about the impact that it's had on music.
Sure.
I touched on this in an interview I did with Melissa Kroenke, who's a local musician, and she's the morning DJ on 98.5 KRZ. She had a local music podcast a few years back, and I was a guest on it. And she asked me what I thought about social media and if it's a good thing or a bad thing for music. And what I said was, it's a double-edged sword. And Bryan kind of went into it a little bit when he said that, you could put your stuff up there and there's the potential for all these people to see it, but it doesn't mean that they're all going to see it. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, I think the thing with, MySpace, it kind of started the if you build it, they will come mentality. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that works. Sometimes it works with certain things, but a lot of times it just doesn't. It's just not realistic, And the thing is like, I used to laugh when people would be like, I have like 800 friends on Facebook. And it's like, yeah, how many of them came to your show? You know what I mean? The same 5 people that you've known your entire life came to your show. And you're worried about the 800 friends that you have on MySpace or whatever. Mm-hmm. And that's why I never put too much stock into the friend thing. The thing is like, it was another promotional tool. And you know what? It did help a little bit. But I don't think it helped as much as people thought originally. I think that, any promotion is good promotion. You know what I mean? Any way you can get yourself out there. I mean, I remember, and I'm sure you do too, before the days of MySpace, when you played a show, you had to print up a flyer and pass it out to people and, staple it to places and stuff like that. Yeah. I remember doing that. I was still doing that even up to as late as like a couple of years ago. I was still doing that.
Yeah. Back before social media, like you had to do that.
Exactly.
Or else nobody would know that you were playing.
And I think the thing is too, is that you and I come from that era. And a lot of the people that came up as the social media era was coming up didn't come from that era. And so like what you had happening was you'd have kids that like got a guitar or a drum set or something for Christmas, and their friends might have got like a bass or a keyboard or a microphone, and then like 2 weeks later they have a band. And now they're on MySpace, and they have a MySpace music page, and they're getting a gig at like the local rec center.
Yep.
And then there's guys like you and I who've been playing music for years, who've been in bands, who've actually like worked at trying to hone our craft and get better, and we're trying to get gigs, and we can't, because all these MySpace kids took the gigs. Right. And then what happened is the MySpace kids lasted like 1 or 2 gigs and then they broke up. Mm-hmm. And then it invariably kind of hurt the scene, because then a lot of promoters didn't really want to book original. And there just really weren't a lot of places to play when we started out. The places there were to play weren't in a good state. They weren't what they once were. And I think that the social media boom kind of contributed to that, because all of a sudden you've got all these bands just popping up overnight, and either they weren't really good bands and they were just really crappy and put on really crappy shows and like killed the venue and killed the scene, or, even if they were good bands, there was just too many of them and there wasn't enough places for them to play. So invariably they would all break up or, whatever. And it was just, it was really for me like, as I said, it was a double-edged sword, because it could have went 2 ways. It could have started like this great era of, oh my God, this is really when the scene's going to rise up and come into its own, or it's just going to crumble. And I mean, as much as I hate to say it, at least in our area, in Northeast PA, I felt like it kind of started to crumble around that time.
Yeah.
Social media wasn't the only thing to blame. There were a lot of other issues, but I mean, I noticed once MySpace started, and I even saw this from another angle from when I was working at the studio. Literally, there would be bands that would come in, and it's like, we would ask them, like, you guys like rehearsed? And they're like, oh, well, we just got together like, a couple weeks ago or whatever, like a month ago. We really don't, we're just going to kind of see what, and it's like, you booked studio time and you're paying $50 an hour for studio time and you don't even have your stuff together yet. And so I just noticed like these types of people infiltrating into the scene. And here's the thing. I'm not bashing anybody. I respect anybody that picks up an instrument, because it's the hardest thing to do, man. If music were easy, everyone would be a musician. It's not easy. It's difficult. But the thing is back in our day when we started out, you had to be at least somewhat good.
Right.
Because they weren't just going to let you up on a stage. You know, they wanted to make sure you were good. They wanted to make sure that, like, you had it together. Because they didn't care about you embarrassing yourself. They cared about you embarrassing them.
Yeah, like, their main goal is to draw patrons.
And the thing is, too, is like, everybody talks about, well, you know, social media, you know, it took away the gatekeepers. And I say to that, yes and no.
Right.
It took away gatekeepers in the traditional sense, but then it made new gatekeepers in the fact that the standard has been lowered so much that you don't really have to be talented anymore. And listen, I'll be the first to tell you right now, I am not a great guitar player. I am not a great singer. I'm good enough to do it, but I'm a good songwriter. That's the only thing that I will, you know, pat myself on the back for. I'm not even patting myself on the back for it because I know there's people out there that are way better than I am. But I at least know that I have something to offer. And I think in the day of social media, everybody thinks they have something to offer, regardless of if they do or not.
Right, yeah.
And the difference between the people who try and the people who are just kind of just fair weather about it are that the people who try, you know, they're not going to hit us instantly, but they're going to outlast everybody else. And I think that's why we're still here, because we know that it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of these kids that were getting on MySpace back then, they thought it was a sprint. Because again, you had bands that were getting big online. Even bands that were already established at that time, being on MySpace just elevated them.
Yeah.
I remember when The Black Parade came out by My Chemical Romance. That album was everywhere anyway, because they were on a major label, they were on Reprise Records. They'd already had a couple hits prior to that album, but when this album came out, it was massive. And I think a big part of that spread was them being on MySpace. And they were really active with their social media.
Yep.
And their fans were of that age that they were on MySpace. That's where they all were. And they took advantage of that.
Yeah.
And they were very smart to do that. But again, it was just one of those things, like, it works for some people. And like, again, it helped that they were already established and it helped that they were on a major label. You know, Joe Schmo from nowhere, Indiana, isn't going to have the same success.
Only if they have the right haircut.
Well, there were a lot of people that had that haircut that didn't last, so I can't even say that. But
I tried that haircut.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
The emo swoop.
The old pictures of me.
Good Lord. But the point I'm trying to make is, like, there were people like yourself and me who were really trying to make a name for ourselves and were, like, really earnest about it, and really, we didn't have delusions of grandeur. At least I didn't. I never thought I was going to get famous on MySpace. I can't speak for you.
I was really hoping, but I never thought, like,
it's like the old saying, you know, hope for the best, expect the worst.
Yeah.
That way, if you kind of get somewhere in the middle, it's like, oh, okay.
Sounds good to me.
So that's fine. But I think the thing is like, that really hurt the music scene in our area, and I'm sure in other areas too. And the thing is like, it's not an overnight thing, but I think, again, you hear about all these bands that were quote unquote overnight successes. They were not overnight successes. But anyway, back to what we were saying about, social media and the impact and everything. It was great. And it still is great. I'm still active on Facebook. I got on Instagram like a couple years ago. I was late to the party on that. I have no desire to go on Twitter because Twitter just seems like a complete and utter waste of time. Like,
dude,
I'm
I
sorry.
have a Twitter and it's stupid. It's like, I don't know. I think you just have to be in the right place at the right time to get, like, blown up on Twitter. You know what I mean? But I've been using Twitter for years, and it just never seemed to take off, and I haven't posted anything on Twitter in a long time.
And I think the thing is, too, is like, with social media, because there's so much of it, there's so much content. There is like a content overload. And I don't mean just music. We're talking music, we're talking games, we're talking movies, we're talking TV shows, all this stuff, and it's just so much. And it's just this endless cycle, and we're just getting beat over the head with it. And I honestly think it's to the point where, like, even if there was something on social media, like, let's just say there is somebody out there that could potentially be a fan of you or I, right? But they're getting beat over the head every single day by the stuff that they don't like, that they just tune out, and they just start skipping the videos, skipping the posts.
Yep.
And that's how it starts. And it's an endless cycle. And it's really hard to break through all of that. It's just because there's so much. The thing is, too, is like when we started out, there was no YouTube. Netflix was a DVD subscription service that you got through the mail. And that was if they had your DVD even. There was no MySpace. There was no Facebook. There was no Twitter. There was no Instagram. Blogs were kind of in their infancy. There wasn't all this media. So, like, it was possible, like, if you had a band, or if you were an actor in a play or something like that, you could potentially tell people and put up flyers and show people, like, hey, I've got this going on. And you might get some people to come out to it.
Yeah.
And even if you don't, you might get some eyes on your stuff. And you might get people looking and see that you're out there. Whereas now, it's the whole, if you build it, they will come mentality. And I think that's so broken right now. And it's been broken since the beginning, but it's more broken now because there's just so much stuff. And, you know, we talked about the algorithm. It's just so hard to get into the algorithm. On YouTube, for instance, like, there will be videos that will get suggested to you that were like 10 years old. And it's like the most random thing. Like, I got this video suggested to me one time on YouTube. It was like, guy cuts grass with a scythe. And it was like this 5-minute video of a guy cutting this wooded area, cutting the grass with a scythe. And it had like millions of views on it. And it was like an older video. I'm like, how does this hit the algorithm, but somebody's music video or live performance or something doesn't?
Right. Somebody like pouring their heart and soul into a performance, and one person will see it and hit the thumbs down. You know what I mean? Like, what?
It's ridiculous. It's crazy. I think the important thing is, if you're a creative person on social media, I'm speaking not just to musicians, I'm speaking to actors, playwrights, authors, poets, sculptors, painters, you know, craftsmen, whatever it is that you do, whatever your niche is. I think it's important to not put all of your eggs in the social media basket, because not everybody is on social media. Believe it or not, there are still people I talk to that are not on social media. They just have no desire to do it. They have no time for it. Or if they are on social media, they might be on one platform and not the other. So, like, you can't just put all your eggs in, like, the Facebook basket. But then you can't put all your eggs in the Instagram basket. But then you can't put all your eggs in the Twitter basket. And that's also not necessarily to say that you should put your eggs in all those baskets, because, again, I think you need to find where you have a good presence online and kind of stick with that and strengthen that. But at the same time, keep the word of mouth thing going. Tell people. Tell your friends. Tell your coworkers. Maybe they don't care. Maybe they do. Yeah. You're never going to know until you tell them. And honestly, if you're relying on social media to tell them, again, if you don't fit into that algorithm, if you don't fit into that specific niche that's hot right now, that's trending, as the kids say.
Yeah, they're not going to see it.
They're not going to see it. It's like if a tree falls down in the woods and no one's there to hear it, does it make a sound?
Right. Here's an interesting thing that I've noticed with Facebook. So I'm like the guru for band pages. I have like a whole bunch of pages that I run. Like, I run pages for In Autumn Sunrise. I run a page for Bryan Brophy Music. I run a page for my jewelry thing that I do, right? And I get more interaction when I share it through my personal page than I do on the actual fan, quote unquote, fan page that I make for my stuff.
Yeah.
Like, nobody, like, I'll get likes and comments when I share that I'm playing here on Saturday. But when I go over to my page and post it, crickets. Nobody sees it. No, you know? Yeah. And it's almost like, well, what's the point of me having a page? And then I think about deleting the page, and then I'm like, well, there are people that I'm not friends with on Facebook who follow that page.
Yeah.
You know? So it's like, it's kind of like, well, what do you do?
Yeah.
Now I have a question for you.
Okay.
When are you getting on TikTok?
You know, here's the thing. I think it's cool to a degree, but I was watching this guy's video on YouTube. This guy does like experiments, and like he's a music guy. I think he's a rapper and he's a producer or something like that. And he does like these experiments of trying to get his stuff trending on certain social media formats and what that entails. And he breaks down how much money it costs, because you could buy likes, you could buy follows. It's this business. It's insane. And he spent, I think the one time he spent like $10,000 or whatever, and like he still couldn't get it going. Like he still couldn't get it going viral or whatever. And like basically what these influencers do on TikTok is a band or an artist could send them a song or something and be like, hey, you know, here's this new hot track I got. Do a little dance to it or something on your video and see if you can get it trending. And that's how it works. Now, some of the influencers want more money. Some of them want less money if they're just starting out. And I was just watching this video and I'm like, he spent all that money and all this time and jumped through all these hoops to get these people to try to dance to his song on TikTok to try to get it popular. And it still didn't work. I'm like,
that's crazy.
I couldn't do that. Like, I just can't justify doing that. There's some stuff on there that's funny and it's entertaining. And I think it's like a harmless little thing. I don't think it's hurting anybody. But at the same time, again, I wouldn't put my eggs in that basket. I wouldn't do it.
Now, here's something really interesting. For the last couple years, my colleague used to DJ the dances and things for the school. Now I do it. So basically what I do is I just bring my sound system and I'll just plug my phone in and I'll play songs. So I was like, oh, this is really easy. You know what I mean? So like I'll have the kids give me requests and everything, and I make a whole playlist of the kids' requests, and I'm like, this is going to be easy. I'm just going to use the same one next year. I start playing the songs. They're like, we don't want to hear these. These were like so last year. These are the new songs that are trending now. So like those songs that blew up are nothing. Like they're forgotten about. And
that's the other thing too. It's that whole, you know, these people think it's a sprint, you know, and it's like these songs will blow up, but then they go nowhere.
And then they're gone. No one wants to hear them again.
When it comes to like the newer bands, it seems like they take that really fast and loose approach with getting hits and trying to get stuff out there and getting it to go viral. And like the thing is it doesn't last. It's also to the point where like the older musicians, like they'll release an album to very little fanfare, and it's almost like they don't even care. It's just like, yeah, whatever, here's my album. You know, it'll probably sell decent in the first week and you'll forget about it by the second, but whatever. Some of these more legendary acts should try the approach that these younger acts are taking of just, screw it, let's just try to get a hit and try to get it to go viral for a couple weeks and call it a day. I honestly think they'd be better off if they did that. But again, they come from that older era where they want the long-term success, and they want their whole body of work to be recognized and not just one song they did or a snippet of a song. Because we live in that era now where it's just hit and run, man. You know, when it comes to songs, when it comes to movies, when it comes to TV shows that were a hit like last season, now this new season comes up, well, there's another show now. We don't care about this other show.
Yeah.
And again, it's part of the culture of the streaming, and there's so much to choose from. It makes it really difficult. And that's why it's so difficult to be a creative person. It's the easiest time and it's the hardest time. It's the easiest because there are so many resources and so many things you could do to get your work out there.
Yeah, anybody could put anything up on the internet.
But then you still have to fight to get it heard.
Yeah.
So that part of it never changed. In the beginning, going back to the whole gatekeepers thing, you had the gatekeepers, you had the record labels, you had the promoters, you had the venue owners telling you, oh, well, unless you do this, you can't get in. But it served some purposes because you didn't get a flood of people coming in and trying to break in and muddying up the water. And the people that did come in appreciated it more, and they worked harder at it to be good and to stay good. Whereas now we just live in that kind of instant gratification era, and people think, well, I've got a computer, I've got Pro Tools, I'll make a song. And that's all well and good, but like, where are you going to be, years from now? Are you still going to be doing this?
Right.
Or are you just in this for trying to get a quick buck, trying to get that Instagram famous,
It's almost like society doesn't have an attention span anymore. It's like, oh my God, this is my favorite song. And then a new song comes out and it's like, what song? What? Who?
Funny thing about that is there have been bands that were big in America for a time, and then their popularity kind of petered off a little bit. They'd go over to Europe and they'd be huge again.
And they'd still kill it over there. Yeah.
And I don't know what it is with the culture. And I mean, again, I don't know how social media has affected other countries, if it's affected them in the same way it's affected America. But there used to be a time where like the general consensus was if you wanted to be respected as a musician or a creative person, you went over to Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Because for whatever reason, they just appreciated it more over there. They respected it more. You weren't looked at as a product. You were looked at as like, oh man, you're a creator. You have this gift. Whereas here, it's like, okay, that's nice. Next.
Yeah.
And I kind of think that's what social media has done. It's kind of exacerbated that. I think the real future in social media, if it is to be more than what it is, there's always these groups on Facebook and places like that. And I think that if you can build up groups of people that are interested in what you do and build a community from that, not from Facebook as a whole, or Instagram as a whole, or Twitter as a whole, or YouTube as a whole, but just find those people that dig what you do and try to draw them in, try to pull them together. And that's kind of what MySpace was. MySpace was a lot of like-minded people. At least that's the way it started. And again, if people were going to like your MySpace music page, it was because typically they liked your music or they liked your type of music.
Mm-hmm.
And so you were able to kind of more easily form a community. Whereas with Facebook and Instagram, you're just kind of casting your line out there and just hoping for the best. And you don't really know.
It was easier on MySpace to get likes and fans who you didn't personally know. But Facebook, I never get likes from random people. It's usually, like somebody that I just became friends with or whatever. But yeah, MySpace, I remember it would be like, oh yeah, this person likes your page, this person, you look it up and it's like, oh my God, these people are like from Australia. Like, what?
The funniest thing was when my first album came out, I released it on iTunes through this company called TuneCore because you couldn't just get your stuff directly on iTunes. You had to go through like a third party. I don't know if it's still that way now or not, but they would give you stats about who downloaded your album, like where they were from. I had a download from Canada and I had a download from somewhere in Europe. And it's like, I've never been to either of these countries. And I don't know what my appeal is to those countries, but apparently somebody dug it, and that's pretty cool. And that's why I say it's a double-edged sword, because it could be a good thing too, just as much as it could be a bad thing. But again, it's just like I said, I think with social media, you can't put all your eggs in that basket. You really have to be diligent about what you do and kind of know what you want to do and know how you want to do it, and try not to get bummed out about the algorithm thing and, the trending thing. As long as you can kind of get a core group of people that dig what you do or at least remotely interested in it, who knows? Maybe it takes off. Maybe one day somebody likes your page, just sight unseen, and they listen to one of your songs like, oh my God, this is a pretty good song. Wow, what else do they have? And then they listen to it and they tell their friends and they like it. And, again, it's kind of like the word of mouth thing. And I've always felt like the word of mouth thing was the best way to do it. I have gotten more people to come to gigs and buy my albums by talking to them in person than I have through the internet.
Yeah, same.
I don't think social media is going away anytime soon, and I don't want it to. I think that
everything has its ups and downs.
For all its faults, social media has allowed people to do things who might have never otherwise done it or had the opportunity. All it takes is, one person to post a song and then somebody sees that song and says, wow, I'd like to write a song. I'd like to do something, and maybe it encourages them to do it. And maybe that person could become the next big music star.
Yeah, right on.
But with that being said, I think that's a good place as any to end it. We want to thank you for listening to the Chords and Conversation podcast. I'm Chris Hludzik.
And I'm Bryan Brophy.
And we'll see you next time. The Chords and Conversations podcast was conceived and produced by Bryan Brophy and Chris Hludzik and engineered, edited, mixed, and mastered by Chris Hludzik. The Chords and Conversations podcast theme song is an instrumental version of The Powers That Be by The Latter Day from their 2006 album As We Speak, and was written by Chris Hludzik, produced and performed by Bryan Brophy and Chris Hludzik, and engineered, mixed, edited, and mastered by Chris Hludzik. All rights to this podcast and its content reserved by Bryan Brophy and Chris Hludzik.